Okay, thanks for giving us the opportunity to provide an additional perspective on this subject called sustainable urban lighting. The first question that we ask ourselves is, are we meeting the challenges and needs of cities and communities today and tomorrow? And what we're finding is that often, and it's been talked about today, that there are often conflicting needs that we have to deal with, and how do we actually deal with them? And in particular, we have to perhaps deal with problems and issues that we haven't even thought of yet. And particularly when we're introducing new technology into the industry, and I'll touch on that in a moment, it often has unintended consequences, consequences we didn't even think about. So what I want to talk about is a little bit from different types of views or perspectives, and I'd like to talk first of all a bit from a helicopter point of view, and then I'll talk a little bit about from a ground view and then a practical view, and I'll end with a bit of a holistic view. How do we look at the thing in its entirety in terms of sustainability?
Excuse me, can you tell us your name again? Because we're a little bit lost here.
Oh, that's all right. I'm Robert Diedrich.
Okay.
Yep. You're welcome. Okay, if we look at the big picture, and this word's thrown around a lot, the smart city, what does it actually mean? Everyone talks about being smart. And it also means, how do we use technology? And if we talk about using technology, and it was touched on just before with Yari, technology is good because it can help to improve in terms of less energy, less waste, all of those sorts of things, improved light control, and in particular, if we talk about LEDs, additional color temperatures, and what we can actually do with them in addressing some of these perhaps conflicting needs that we see there in urban environments. And of course, greater sustainability. I'm going to take a step back, and if we talk about LEDs, when they were perhaps introduced into the market, if we talk about street and area lighting at around 2010, they had an enormous impact, and it's perhaps what we would call a once-in-a-lifetime game changer, because it had an impact on everything. It had an impact on manufacturing, how we design products, it had an impact on lighting design, and it had an impact on how we understand the quality of light. If you look at the last 10 years and how we talk about light, I can tell you when we were talking about fluorescent lights or HID in the 90s, we didn't talk about it in terms of what we've talked about in the last 10 years. Light spectrums, quality, visual comfort, all of those sorts of things. So we've made enormous steps, and I'm going to tell you a little anecdote that when you introduce technology, I touched on it before, it can have unintended consequences. And I'll talk about a pilot project in Germany when they first introduced street and area lighting and LED into a city called Bielefeld. They did a pilot street, and they thought, wonderful, they can reduce the energy using LEDs, and in particular, with the lenses with LEDs, you can target the light much more accurately, of course. In the old days with HID, you'd often have 2 reflectors only, and that's it, and it would throw the light area, 1 blob here or 1 blob there. Guess what? All the residents started to complain. They complained because the light was too cut off. What they preferred was the blobs of light lighting up their front yard. It had unintended consequences. And it comes back a little bit, and I'll touch on it at the end, about this, what we think is really, really important is education. People needed to be educated what is light and what is quality of light and what impact it has, because it will have unintended consequences. And that's also the importance of also looking above and beyond, and thinking about things that may happen, because it will always have unintended consequences that we didn't foresee. I'll talk a little bit now, because we're perhaps into less revolution than we are into evolution, and particularly we talk about light control. If you've been involved with so-called life cycle analyses or environmental product declarations, which have become very big in the last 5 years, particularly in Europe, where you take this holistic view of a product from its conception through to its end of life. In particular, when it comes to street and area lighting, literally 85% of, let's say, carbon is all in that operational phase. So it's all in the use phase. 15% is only through the manufacturing phase. So the use of light controls is very, very critical and has been very important in terms of reducing energy waste, energy consumption, all of those sorts of things. But I would say that we're probably coming to the end of the cycle in terms of so-called low-hanging fruits, in terms of what we can gain, in terms of sustainability and what we can do. And now we have to get even smarter about what we do. And what's really, really important, I think, is it's been touched on again this morning in different types of presentations that unfortunately as humans we're often very short-termism. We don't look very far beyond the nose. And what we do today is all about the next generation. By the time we put things into effect, we won't see the benefit of it. We'll all be dead. So we really have to think beyond to the next generation and what do we want for them in terms of a positive world. And simply put, what we would like to see is that people can see the stars, and it's a bit of a holistic thing. I like this term because it's not just seeing the stars from a light pollution point of view, it's seeing the stars also from a smog point of view. We want clear skies so you can see the stars. That's really what it's all about. The message is quite clear, and both go hand in hand. That means if we look at it from a development brief, and we're all stakeholders in this supply chain, let's say either a manufacturer, lighting designer, electrical engineer, or the end stakeholder, we all have a stake in this. And firstly, the focus should always be on sustainability and night-sensitive lighting, dark skies, but most importantly, it should be built for the future. And it comes a little bit back to these unintended consequences. We need to build the right to repair and refurbish. It makes no sense to install luminaires that you cannot repair and you cannot refurbish. And in terms of sustainable solutions for the night, we think that the 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting, these come from the International Dark Sky Association or the Illuminating Engineering Society. It must be useful, it was touched on before. All light should have a clear purpose, it should be targeted, light should only be directed to where it is needed. Light low levels, light should not be brighter than necessary. It should be controlled, and importantly, light colour. And if you combine those two, control and light colour, you can come up with some fantastic solutions in terms of satisfying this need for safety and this need also for darkness, which is also very, very critical. So I've played a little bit on the words because at the end of the day, what's really, really important, you can have all of these grand ideas in terms of what you want to do and change the world, but it's going to cost. Someone has to pay for this. So I like to call it street smart city. So it means we have to be practical in what we do. We have to come up with realistic solutions and cost-effective solutions. It's no use having the grand idea and it's at the end of the day the stakeholder says, well, it's too expensive. Again, it was touched on before, you need to add value, but it comes back to value for money. At the end of the day, someone has to pay for this. And one of the levers that we can touch on that's very cost effective is this subject called colour temperature. And again, this has been one of the biggest advantages of LEDs. It gives us much more flexibility in what we can do, not just from lens and light control, but what we can do with colour temperature. And this probably also goes a long way to this education that's occurred in the marketplace in the last 10 years, understanding the quality of light much, much better and the effect it has on us, both psychologically and also the effect it has on nature. And if you go back to the old days, and it's also, the old days are not bad, if you look back to ceramic metal halide lamps, there were only 2 colours, 3000, 4000, and that was it. Nowadays, we talk about much more nuanced colour temperatures. We're talking about standards like 2200 right up to 4000 K. And now we're looking beyond at combining, offering 2 fully integrated colour temperatures. So you can begin to satisfy these 2 conflicting needs sometimes, the safety of people and the need for darkness and the respect for nature in the evening, etc. So you combine, say, for example, true amber with 2200 K. if there's a predominance there where there needs to be respect for the night and for creatures, or you can maybe do a combination of 2,200, 3,000 K, where there's perhaps a stronger need for safety. And you can combine those in different types of luminaires, depending, say, on the application and where it's leading to in terms of nature reserves. And yes, in short, you can see here, we see this occurring very strongly in the US, in wildlife areas where turtles, this subject of blue spectrum was touched on this morning in Martin's talk. And the use of a program like Wildlight, where you can balance the human activity whilst preserving the night. And we can see also this discussion that's occurred in the last 10 years in terms of the quality of light. Finally, we're talking about the importance of darkness. This is really, really critical. I think we're starting to move beyond this idea that darkness is bad, that it means I'm unsafe. There's a responsibility in there that sometimes it's not just the lighting in terms of how we create urban spaces to be safe. It's not always just to do with the lighting, it's how we actually use the furniture, the trees, all of those sorts of things, and that comes back to a holistic view. Lighting is only but one aspect of safety. Going to drill down a little bit into this so-called PC amber and true amber, two wonderful light sources. Just to give you an idea, PC amber is no more, no less than a warmer colour that has a phosphor coating over it to reduce the blue spectrum. If you're really wanting to be wildlife sensitive, then you really need to go to a true amber. And you'll see in the next couple of slides, with the phosphor coating, there's still a bit of blue spectrum in there. And when you go to the true amber, the bandwidth is very, very narrow. The blue spectrum has been removed, effectively. So it's perfect for like environments where there are turtles, etc. And the benefits of amber, this has again been touched on before in different presentations, is of course less sky glow is one of them. And of course we know this from our iPads, you remove the blue spectrum before you go to bed, you're going to sleep better, because the blue spectrum disturbs your sleep. The other one is that it also of course attracts less insects. And the other one is, as touched on before, that turtles, they're attracted, it disturbs them in terms of this blue spectrum. And the idea here is, of course, with this use of PC amber or true amber, and this is just an example of Phillip Island in the south of Australia, where penguins come out in the evening, and all of this was done in PC amber. So there's a nice balance between the needs of the penguins and the need for safety, because it's an enormous tourist attraction. So how you can do this in terms of lighting, you can use combinations like 2,200, 3,000 K, etc. And then you can use it in different types of applications. So ideal for waterfronts, etc. Low-level lighting, but you still need a certain amount of lighting there, but you're not disturbing the wildlife, etc. And in terms of control options, you can use something like a so-called automated, where, say, until 10 o'clock at night, it's operating on 3,000 K, and then through the darker hours of the night, it switches automatically to 2,200 K. Or if it's where safety is more of a criteria, even for later periods of the night, you can use it on a motion system. So it simply will overlay the 2,200, or if you're using PC amber or true amber, it'll overlay it so you offer more safety. Because again, if you're using true amber, it is less energy efficient. So there are always consequences with using these types of light sources. And as I touched on here, in this case here, what they used was in the car park areas and all of that, they used PC amber. And then when it came to the penguins further away, we can actually go and see them, they switched to true amber. So in this case, they only use true amber and PC amber, and that's it. Just touch on a little bit of the connectivity options and the benefits. Of course, we're all aware of it. There are energy savings, safety, flexibility, etc. But again, it comes back to you don't need to be complicated. There's a bit like the KISS principle, keep it simple. It doesn't need to be expensive. There are simple solutions available now to satisfy these types of conflicting needs sometimes. Just looking a little bit beyond, we call this tailoring the light. If you're talking about how this could look in the future, we also see the possibility. And again, with a changing climate, safety is still critical. Say you can use this in terms of street lighting where you can switch to different types of lenses depending on the environment. So suddenly you need to switch from a luminance-based to an illuminance-based or back and forth. You can use the same control systems with different types of lenses and the same luminaire. And that means you can have adaptive light for different types of environmental situations. And another important thing is it comes a little bit back to this concept of refurbishment, this holistic view. It's important also standards. Zaga Book 15. We can see the agitation in the market, again, technology leaders pushing the boundaries, but at the end of the day, standards are super, super important because they give us a certain amount of comfort in knowing I can refurbish, repurpose, all of those things in the future. That's super critical, which is why I want to come to this and end with this subject called sustainability, because night-sensitive lighting, it's only one piece in the bigger puzzle, this holistic view. And I think we're all stakeholders in this, and I think we all need to be passionate about it. We all have to deliver on this subject called sustainability. Again, no matter where you sit in the supply chain, it's our responsibility, and as it was touched on before, collaboration is super important. No one can do this on their own. So if you're looking at sustainability, the entire life cycle, what we've been doing since around 2013 is so-called life cycle analyses, environmental product declarations to understand our responsibility in the chain. And it's also, again, comes back to we're all stakeholders in this. We should all be asking the questions, can we do this better? Are there other ways of doing it? It was touched on before in the last presentation. We all need to be challenged, and some products need to go and die. They shouldn't be around anymore. And that's really, really important. So if you're talking about this subject of sustainability, and I can tell you we're also looking at things like cradle to cradle, one's a qualitative, one's a quantitative, and at the moment there's a huge dominance around operational carbon, but as our network, our grid becomes more sustainable, I can tell you it'll start to switch back to embodied carbon. How do we actually produce and this concept of a circular economy. So that means you need to look at everything in terms of product design, how is the product manufactured, through to the use phase and through to the end of life. And that also includes refurbishment. So we work in the US at the moment with Green Light Alliance as an example. What they're looking is creating industry standards for so-called life cycle analysis. So you have benchmarking. One of the issues at the moment is we're not able to benchmark. What is the standard? What should we be trying to achieve? Because once you benchmark, you can set the next goalpost. And we all understand what we're talking about. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is protect the beauty of the skies, and it's a collaborative effort. No one can do it on their own. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this talk. I really liked that you pointed out that sustainability is our collective effort, and we all have skin in the game.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you about the wild light, and just maybe to put it into perspective, what's the situation around the world? Where is the biggest demand for this product in the world?
France.
France.
France, in nature reserves, they have a particular law about temperature colour in nature reserves. Another one we see is in Australia, in the south of Australia, and in the US in the south on the Florida coastline. That's where we're seeing it.
Okay, and the projects are mainly nature reserves, or
nature reserves, literally where people are going camping, all of those sorts of things, and then either seeing these seasonal, like the turtles, hatchlings, all of those sorts of things.
So it's more related to being one or not being at least disruptive with nature as possible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions, please. Yes, we have Jari here.
Yep.
Thank you, Robert. Beautiful presentation. It's nice to see someone use the same font in their presentation. That joking aside, we had a really good discussion at dinner table with some people last night, and I think what we kind of came up with is that there's a lot of research on lighting. Most of it is very manufacturer driven, so it's very, very technical, and that's fine.
Yep.
But now that we are talking about collaboration, would you guys be interested in actually funding a research about psychology and perception? Because I think, you know, not knowing all the research in the world, but I think that is something that we are missing.
Yep.
Yeah.
In short, yes, we committed to like something like Green Light Alliance, very scientific based. And I think it's interesting, that's why I touched on it. It was interesting that earlier in the day was talked about the psychological impacts. I find it fantastic in Tallinn that, that the end stakeholder is being asked. And I think this idea, what we touched on before in Bielefeld, is suddenly we're confronted with things we didn't know. So unless we know, you know, what people think and feel about it, definitely, it's good.
Yeah. And that needs to be a collaborative effort. So
Yep,
if there's any
totally.
cities here interested in that, let's you know, do it together.
Yep.
Any more questions, please? Do we have questions for Robert? Okay, thank you for this very, very interesting presentation. Please.